He threw my overalls on the floor and sneered, "I need a woman with elegance, not grease under her fingernails like you." I simply picked up my wrench and smiled, "Enjoy your new life, Roger." He didn't know I had already planted a device in his luxury car that would broadcast his darkest secrets to the entire town. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, grab a warm cup of tea and get comfortable. I'd love to know what time of day you're watching this video. Please comment M for morning, A for afternoon, or E for evening. Now, let me take you into this story. It is funny how a storm feels different when you are standing inside a garage. Outside, the wind was howling, tearing at the vinyl siding of our suburban home like a wild animal trying to get in. But inside my sanctuary, the air was heavy and still. It smelled of motor oil, old rubber, the sharp tang of degreaser, and the metallic scent of cold iron. To most people, that smell is offensive. To me, Brenda Blakely, it is the smell of survival. It is the smell of the legacy my father left me. I took a sip of my coffee, which had gone cold an hour ago. It tasted bitter and chalky, but I swallowed it anyway because I needed the caffeine to keep my hands from shaking. I looked down at my phone again. The screen was the only source of light in the dim workshop, casting a ghostly blue glow over my calloused fingers. There it was. The little blue dot. It was blinking. Pulsing. Mocking me. My husband, Roger, had told me he was at a client dinner. He had stood in front of the hallway mirror just 3 hours ago, adjusting his silk tie, checking his teeth, and spraying an excessive amount of expensive cologne. He told me it was a high-stakes negotiation for a commercial real estate deal that would finally put us in the big leagues. He said, "Brenda, this is it. The deal of the century. Don't wait up." He had kissed my cheek, grimaced slightly at the smudge of grease on my collar, and driven off in his gleaming silver Porsche 911. But the blue dot on my screen told a different story. The GPS tracker application showed his car had not moved from the parking garage of Sapphire Heights for 4 hours. Sapphire Heights was a luxury apartment complex on the other side of town, nowhere near the steakhouse where he claimed to be meeting his clients. It was a place for young professionals, influencers, and people who had more money than sense. It was definitely not a place for a business meeting at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night. I am 55 years old, and my hands are permanently stained with the ghost of engine oil. No matter how much I scrub with pumice soap, the dark lines remain etched into my fingerprints. I fix cars for a living. I know how to listen to an engine and tell you if a piston is misfiring or if a belt is slipping just by the pitch of the whine. I trace problems to their source. Every rattle, every leak, every strange vibration has a cause. And right now, my marriage was vibrating so hard it was about to shake itself apart. I had installed that GPS tracker 3 weeks ago. I disguised it inside the onboard diagnostics port under the dashboard. It was a clever little piece of tech, drawing power directly from the car battery, so it never needed charging. Roger thought he was so smart. He thought he was the sophisticated one in this marriage with his Italian suits and his manicured nails. But he did not know the first thing about the machine he drove. He thought I was just being a dutiful wife, ensuring his precious status symbol was running smoothly. He had no idea I was monitoring his lies. The garage door rattled violently as a heavy gust of wind slammed against it. The storm outside was getting worse. I could feel the electrical tension in the air, the ozone charging the atmosphere. It felt identical to the tension that had been building in our house for months. The silence between us at dinner. The way he turned his phone screen down whenever I walked into the room. The way he flinched when I touched him. "Mom?" The voice cut through the silence like a dropped wrench. I jumped, nearly dropping my phone. My heart hammered against my ribs. I quickly locked the screen and slid it into the deep pocket of my coveralls. I turned around to see my 17-year-old daughter, Holly, standing in the doorway that connected the garage to the kitchen. She looked so small in her oversized college sweatshirt, her arms crossed tightly over her chest as if she were trying to hold herself together. Her hair was messy, pulled up in a loose bun, and she wore her reading glasses. She looked tired. Too tired for a girl her age. "Hey, honey," I said, forcing my voice to sound steady. "I thought you were upstairs studying for your calculus exam." "I was," she said softly. She walked over to the workbench and hopped up to sit on the edge, her legs swinging back and forth. She didn't look at me. She looked at the floor, at the oil stains on the concrete. "Is Dad home yet?" "No," I said, turning back to the carburetor I was rebuilding, just to have something to do with my hands. I picked up a rag and started polishing a piece of metal that was already clean. "He is closing a big deal. He texted me earlier. He said negotiations are running late." Holly was silent for a long moment. The only sound was the rain drumming relentlessly on the metal roof and the soft click of my rag against the metal. "He's not closing a deal, Mom," Holly said. Her voice was barely a whisper, but in the quiet garage, it sounded like a scream. My hand froze. I looked up at her. The pain in her eyes hit me harder than any physical blow. "What do you mean, Holly?" She chewed on her lip, looking down at her sneakers. "Last week, when I was coming home from math tutoring, I saw him. I didn't tell you because I didn't want it to be true." I put the rag down. I walked over and stood in front of her. "Tell me exactly what you saw." "He was downtown," she said, her voice trembling. "Near the jewelry district. He wasn't with a client. He was with a woman. She was young, Mom. Really young. Maybe 30. She had blonde hair and was wearing a white dress. I felt the blood drain from my face. A white dress. Innocence. Purity. Everything I wasn't in my dirty coveralls. Dad was holding the door for her," Holly continued, a tear slipping down her cheek. "He was laughing. He was leaning in close to her. Mom, I haven't seen him laugh like that in years. Not with us." I reached out and pulled my daughter into a hug. She buried her face in my shoulder, sobbing quietly. I held her tight, smelling her shampoo, feeling the shaking of her shoulders. It broke my heart that she had been carrying this secret alone. She was trying to protect me. She was trying to protect the illusion of our family. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she whispered into my oily shirt. "You have nothing to be sorry for," I said fiercely, smoothing her hair with my rough hand. "You are brave for telling me. Never apologize for the truth, Holly. The truth is the only tool that matters." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with one hand, keeping the other arm around Holly. It was a text from Roger. "Negotiations running late. Going to stay at a hotel near the office so I can be fresh for the morning signing. Don't wait up. Love you." I looked at the text. Then I switched apps and looked at the blue dot. It was still parked at Sapphire Heights. He wasn't at a hotel. He wasn't at the office. He was with her. "Is it him?" Holly asked, pulling back to look at my face. "Yes," I said. My voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "He says he is working late." "What are you going to do?" Holly asked. She looked scared. Not of me, but for me. She knew how much I had sacrificed. She knew I had kept this garage running through recessions and hard times just to put food on the table while Roger chased his dreams. I looked around my garage. I looked at the tools hanging on the pegboard, each one organized and clean. I looked at the lift, the air compressor, the stacks of tires. This was my domain. In here, if something was broken, I fixed it. If something was useless, I threw it out. "I am going to do what I do best, Holly," I said, a cold, hard smile touching my lips. "I am going to diagnose the problem. And then I am going to fix it." Part 2, Flashback, Grease and Grand Pianos. Word count, 900 words. To understand why Roger's betrayal cut so deep, deeper than just the infidelity, you have to understand where I came from, and more importantly, where he desperately wanted to go. I inherited Blakely's auto repair from my father. I grew up in this shop. While other little girls were playing with Barbie dolls and having tea parties, I was learning the difference between a socket wrench and a torque wrench. My father was a man of few words, but he had a code of honor that was unbreakable. He used to tell me, "Brenda, grease washes off, but a bad reputation sticks forever. Do good work, be honest, and you will always have bread on the table." I worshipped him. But I had a secret. I loved the mechanics of music just as much as the mechanics of an engine. I had a gift for the piano. It was strange, perhaps, to see a girl with grease under her fingernails sitting at a keyboard, but my hands, strong from turning bolts, could dance over the keys with a delicacy that surprised everyone. I played Chopin and Liszt in the church hall on Sundays. That was where I met Roger. Roger was charming back then. He was 25, fresh out of business school, full of dreams about real estate empires and investment portfolios. He didn't have a dime to his name, but he had ambition that burned bright. He told me he loved the contrast of me, the woman who could rebuild a transmission by day and play a nocturne by night. He said I was earthy and artistic. He made me feel like I was a diamond in the rough. We got married, and for a while, it was good. I ran the shop, bringing in a steady, reliable income. Roger chased deals. Most of them failed, but I covered us. I paid the mortgage. I paid for the groceries. I paid for his suits. I believed in him. But as Roger started to climb the social ladder, or at least, tried to claw his way up, his view of me changed. He didn't see earthy anymore. He saw dirty. He didn't see artistic. He saw blue-collar. I remember the turning point clearly. It is a memory that burns in my mind like acid. It was 5 years ago. Roger had finally landed a mid-sized deal and invited some potential investors over for a dinner party. He had insisted on buying a baby grand piano for the living room, a Steinway that cost more than my work truck. He couldn't play a note. He didn't even like classical music. But he said it was essential for the aesthetic. He said it showed culture. That night, the house was full of people in expensive clothes drinking our wine. I had spent the entire day at the garage replacing a head gasket on a Ford F-150. It was brutal work. Despite scrubbing my hands with heavy-duty pumice soap for 20 minutes before the party, there were still faint dark lines under my fingernails and a small cut on my thumb wrapped in a skin-colored bandage. After dinner, one of the guests, a banker named Mr. Sterling, noticed the piano. "Does anyone play?" he asked. "Or is it just a beautiful piece of furniture?" Roger laughed nervously. "Oh, mostly furniture, I'm afraid." "I play," I said quietly. Mr. Sterling smiled. "Wonderful. Please, Mrs. Blakely, play us something." I was hesitant. I saw the look in Roger's eyes. It was a warning. But I wanted to share that part of myself. I sat down at the piano. I took a deep breath and started to play Debussy's Clair de Lune. For a moment, the room disappeared. I was lost in the music, feeling the beautiful weight of the ivory keys, the resonance of the strings. The melody flowed out of me, tender and melancholic. I was playing beautifully. Then, suddenly, the music stopped. Roger had walked over and slammed the fallboard down. It missed my fingers by a fraction of an inch. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. The room went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. "Roger?" I whispered, looking up at him in shock. My heart was pounding in my throat. His face was red, his eyes bulging with a mix of embarrassment and rage. He leaned down, bringing his face close to mine, and hissed. It was low enough that the guests across the room couldn't hear the words, but they could certainly feel the venom. Look at your hands, Brenda, he spat. They are disgusting. You are staining the ivory. Do you want my clients to think I married a ditch digger? Get up. He turned to the guests with a fake, bright smile that didn't reach his eyes. So sorry, everyone. Brenda is a bit tired. Her hands are cramping up. You know how it is with manual labor. The arthritis sets in early. I sat there, frozen. The humiliation burned hotter than any engine block I had ever touched. I felt naked. I felt small. I stood up, hiding my hands behind my back like a naughty child, and walked out of the room. I didn't go to the bedroom. I went straight to the garage. I sat in the dark, smelling the oil and the rubber, and I cried until I couldn't breathe. I looked at my hands, the hands that paid for that piano, the hands that paid for the wine they were drinking, and I hated them. From that day on, I never touched the piano when he was home. He treated the garage, the source of the money that paid for his life, like a shameful secret. He would tell people I was in automotive management. He would throw my coveralls into the laundry room as if they were contaminated with nuclear waste. But I stayed. I stayed because of Holly. I stayed because I remembered the man he used to be. I stayed because I thought if I just worked harder, if I made more money, if I kept my hands cleaner, he would look at me with love again. Now, standing in the garage with Holly, the memory of that piano lid slamming down felt like a premonition. He had tried to crush my hands then. Now, he was trying to crush my spirit. Mom? Holly's voice brought me back to the present. You're squeezing the wrench really hard. I looked down. My knuckles were white. I relaxed my grip on the heavy steel tool. I was just thinking about the past, I said. And how blind I have been. I looked at the blue dot on the screen again. Roger was ashamed of my grease-stained hands? Fine. I would use these hands to dismantle his life, bolt by bolt, wire by wire. He wanted a life of luxury and secrets? I was about to give him a masterclass in mechanics. Go to bed, Holly, I said, my voice steady. I have some work to do. What kind of work? She asked. Research, I said. I need to find out exactly what kind of investment your father is making. The storm had passed by the next morning, leaving the sky a bruised purple, like a healing hematoma. I told the guys at the shop, my 2 employees, Mike and Sam, to handle the morning appointments. I told them I had a family emergency. In a way, I did. My family was dying, and I needed to perform an autopsy. I took my truck. It was a 2010 Dodge Ram, reliable, battered, and loud. It rumbled like a beast as I backed it out. It was the antithesis of Roger's Porsche. I drove to the address I had tracked Roger to the night before, Sapphire Heights. But the tracker showed he had moved early in the morning, around 6 a.m. He was now at a location in the trendy downtown district. I followed the dot to a place called the Velvet Lounge. I knew this place. Or rather, I knew of it. It was a high-end spa and boutique that had opened 6 months ago. It was the kind of place that sold face creams for $300, offered aura cleansing, and served cucumber water to women who didn't work for a living. I parked my truck across the street, squeezing it between a Lexus and a BMW. I felt invisible in my flannel shirt and jeans, sitting high up in the cab. I pulled my baseball cap down low and watched the front door. 20 minutes later, the glass door opened. Roger walked out. Seeing him was a physical blow. He was wearing the same suit from yesterday, but it looked rumpled. His tie was gone, and his top button was undone. He looked relaxed. Smug. Walking next to him was the woman Holly had described. She was stunning, I had to admit, in a manufactured, high-maintenance sort of way. Blonde hair that fell in perfect waves, skin that looked like it had never seen a day of hard work, and a white dress that fit her like a second skin. She laughed at something Roger said, throwing her head back, exposing her long, elegant neck. And there it was. Glinting in the morning sun around her neck was a diamond pendant. A teardrop diamond. My breath hitched in my throat. The air in the truck cab suddenly felt too thin. 2 months ago, for our 25th anniversary, I had pointed out a necklace just like that in a catalog. I hadn't asked for much over the years. I bought my own clothes, my own tools. But I had wanted something symbolic. I had told Roger, ideally, it would be nice to have something special. Just to mark the quarter century. He had sighed, looking at me with that patronizing expression he had perfected. Brenda, be realistic. The market is down. My capital is tied up in long-term yields. We don't have the liquidity for frivolous jewelry. Maybe next year, when things pick up. We didn't have the liquidity? I had checked the shop's accounts. We had made a record profit last quarter. I had worked 6 days a week. I had taken on extra fleets of delivery vans to service. We had money. But Roger handled our personal investments. He always moved the money from the joint account to his investment accounts, saying he was optimizing our portfolio. He hadn't bought the necklace because we were broke. He hadn't bought it because he couldn't afford it. He hadn't bought it because he didn't want to waste it on me. I watched as Roger opened the passenger door of his Porsche for her. He leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a quick peck on the cheek like he gave me. It was passionate, lingering. He placed a hand on her waist, pulling her closer. He looked at her with a hunger he hadn't shown me in a decade. Her name, I would later find out, was Vanessa. She was 32 years old, the owner of the Velvet Lounge. I looked at my hands on the steering wheel of my truck. My nails were short and practical. There was a callus on my palm from gripping wrenches. There was a small scar on my index finger from a slip with a screwdriver years ago. These hands built our life. These hands fixed the cars that paid for that Porsche. Then I looked at Vanessa, waving her manicured hand as Roger got into the driver's seat. Comparison is the thief of joy, they say. But in that moment, comparison was the fuel for my rage. Roger wanted elegance? He wanted a trophy? He was using the money I earned with my sweat and backbreaking labor to buy diamonds for a woman who probably didn't know how to change a tire. A woman who likely thought hard work was finding a parking spot for her yoga class. I didn't cry this time. The tears were gone. They had evaporated in the heat of my anger. I pulled out my phone and zoomed in with the camera. Click. I took a photo of the license plate. Click. I took a photo of the necklace. Click. I took a photo of them kissing. As they drove away, Roger laughing at something she said, I didn't follow them. I didn't need to. I knew where Roger was going, probably back to his office to pretend he had been working all night, to shower in the executive gym, and come home with a rehearsed story. And I knew where I was going. I started the engine of my truck. It roared to life with a satisfying, aggressive rumble. I wasn't going home to bake cookies. I was going to see the only man in this town I trusted as much as my father. I was going to the scrapyard. The scrapyard was on the desolate edge of town, a labyrinth of rusted metal, stacked cars, and twisted iron that stretched for acres. It was a place where things went to die, but for people like me, it was a goldmine of parts and possibilities. It was owned by Chuck, a man who looked like he had been built out of spare parts himself. He was 60, with a beard that could hide a wrench, arms as thick as tree trunks, and a laugh that sounded like a grinding transmission. Chuck had been my dad's best friend. He had taught me how to weld when I was 12. He was the uncle I never had. Brenda! Chuck shouted as I climbed out of my truck. He wiped his greasy hands on a rag that was arguably dirtier than his hands were. What brings you to the graveyard? Looking for a master cylinder for that old Dodge? No, Chuck, I said, walking past a stack of crushed sedans. The smell of rust and old gasoline was comforting. It was real. I need a favor. A specific kind of favor. The kind you don't put on the books. Chuck stopped wiping his hands. He looked at my face. He saw the set of my jaw, the cold fire in my eyes. He had known me since I was in diapers. He knew that look. Is it Roger? He asked quietly. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. He is cheating on me, Chuck. With a woman half his age. And he is spending my money to do it. He bought her diamonds with the money from the shop. Chuck spat on the ground, a glob of tobacco hitting the dirt. I never liked that peacock. Always walking around like he owned the place, looking down his nose at us. Remember when he brought his Mercedes here last year and demanded I find him a vintage part, then tried to haggle me down by $50? He treats people like us like we're the dirt on his shoe. I know, I said. He thinks we're stupid, Chuck. He thinks because we have dirt under our nails, we don't have brains in our heads. I managed a small, grim smile. He is about to find out how wrong he is. I pulled a folded piece of paper from my pocket. It was a schematic I had drawn up the night before, after Holly had gone to sleep. It was a modification for a car's body control module, BCM. I need a device, I explained, smoothing the paper out on the hood of a rusted Buick. Something that bypasses the factory alarm system of a 2023 Porsche 911. I want to be able to control the horn, the windows, the wipers, and the audio system remotely. But it needs to be untraceable. If he takes it to the dealership, I want their diagnostics to show nothing but clean code. Chuck leaned over the drawing, squinting. He traced the lines with a thick, scarred finger. You want to tap into the CAN bus system. Bypass the gateway module. He looked up at me, a gleam of appreciation in his eyes. This is nasty work, Brenda. You want to haunt his car. I want to make his life a living hell, I corrected. He loves that car more than he loves me. It is his status symbol. It is how he impresses his new girlfriend. I want to turn it into a nightmare. I want him to be driving down Main Street looking like a fool. I can build the hardware, Chuck said, scratching his beard. I have some logic boards from a totaled Tesla that came in last week and some military-grade transceivers I salvaged. Range? Needs to cover the whole town, I said. Or at least be accessible via cellular network. I want to be able to trigger it from my kitchen. Cellular it is, Chuck nodded. I'll weld a SIM card slot into the board. You can trigger it from an app. How loud do you want the horn output? Loud enough to wake the dead, I said. And I want to be able to route audio through the speakers. Not just music. I want to be able to broadcast files. Specific files. Chuck looked at me for a long moment, then he grinned. It was a terrifying grin, exposing teeth stained with coffee and tobacco. You are your father's daughter, all right. Give me 2 days. I'll make it small enough to fit inside the door panel or behind the dashboard. He will never find it. Thanks, Chuck, I said. Put it on my tab. On the house, Chuck said. For your dad. And because I really want to see that peacock lose his feathers. One question, Chuck said as I turned to leave. Does he know who he is messing with? No, I said, opening the door of my truck. He thinks I am just a dirty mechanic. He forgot that mechanics are the ones who hold the power to make things go, or make them stop. He forgot that we built the machine he is riding in. I drove away from the scrapyard feeling lighter than I had in months. The plan was in motion. But I needed more ammunition. I needed to know exactly how deep the financial hole was. While Chuck was soldering circuit boards and writing code, I went to war on the paper front. I waited until the next night. Roger was downstairs watching sports, screaming at the TV, pretending everything was normal. I went into the home office. Roger was possessive of this room. He called it his command center. He always told me, "Brenda, don't worry your pretty little head about the finances. You earn it, I manage it. That is the division of labor. You are the labor, I am the management." I sat at his computer. It was password protected, of course. I tried his birthday. Incorrect. I tried our anniversary. Incorrect. I tried Holly's birthday. Incorrect. Then, with a sickening feeling in my stomach, I typed in Vanessa. Incorrect. I tried Velvet Lounge. Access granted. My stomach dropped. He used his mistress's business name as the password to our family finances. It was such a casual cruelty. I logged into our joint bank accounts. The numbers on the screen made the room spin. The savings account, which had over $150,000 in it 2 years ago, money I had saved for retirement, for expanding the shop, for emergencies, was down to $12,000. My hand flew to my mouth to stifle a gasp. $12,000. Where did it go? I scrolled through the transaction history. It was a roadmap of betrayal. Withdrawal, $5,000 consulting fees. Transfer, $8,000 VL Enterprises. Payment, $2,500 Luxury Leasing Corporation. VL Enterprises. Vanessa's Lounge. He wasn't investing. He was funding her. He was paying her rent, her staff salaries, probably buying those ridiculous crystals she sold. He was acting like a venture capitalist, but the only return on investment he was getting was in her bed. But then I found the smoking gun. The thing that turned this from heartbreak into a crime scene. I found an email in his deleted items folder. It was from a predatory lending bank. Subject, loan application status urgent. I opened the attachment. It was a loan application for a second mortgage on our house. And a business line of credit secured against my garage. $50,000. The application was approved pending signature. But when I scrolled down to the bottom of the PDF, my heart stopped beating for a full second. There, on the signature line for co-applicant, was my name. Brenda Blakely. It was a good forgery. He must have traced it from an old tax return. But I knew my own hand. The loop on the B was slightly off. I hadn't signed this. I had never seen this document. He was going to leverage the garage, my father's legacy, the only thing that actually produced value in this family, the place that employed Mike and Sam and fed their families, to pour money into a hole for his mistress. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to put my head between my knees. This wasn't just adultery. This was financial homicide. If Vanessa's business failed, and looking at her business model of selling overpriced candles and vibes, it surely would, the bank would take the garage. They would take my home. I would be left with nothing. I would be on the street with Holly. My phone buzzed. I had cloned Roger's phone to my iPad earlier that evening while he was in the shower. It was a risky move, illegal perhaps, but I was past caring about the law. I needed to know everything. A text thread between Roger and Vanessa popped up on the screen. Vanessa, baby, the landlord is asking for the rent again. And I need to order more inventory for the VIP launch party. Did the loan come through? You promised me. Roger, almost, babe. The bank is processing it. The old ball and chain is clueless. I'll have the cash by Friday. Just be patient. Once I secure this, we can start pushing her to sell the garage entirely. It's sitting on prime commercial land. We could get $1 million for the lot alone. We could retire to Cabo. Vanessa, ugh, hurry up. I hate that you have to go home to her and smell that grease. You belong with me. You belong in luxury. Roger, I know. She's disgusting. I had to throw away a shirt last week because she touched me after work. But don't worry. Her grime is paying for your diamonds. Soon, we'll cut her loose. Once the loan clears, I'm filing for divorce. I'll take half the assets and leave her the debt. I stared at the screen. The words blurred through my tears. Her grime is paying for your diamonds. She's disgusting. Leave her the debt. He didn't just want to leave me. He wanted to destroy me. He wanted to suck me dry and discard the husk. I took a screenshot of the texts. I printed the forged loan documents. I saved everything to an external hard drive. Then I walked up to the garage and hid the hard drive inside a hollowed-out car battery shell on the bottom shelf. He wanted to sell the garage? He wanted to cut me loose? I looked at the framed photo of my father on the workbench. He looked tough, uncompromising, a man who built things to last. Don't worry, Dad, I whispered to the photo. He isn't taking the shop. And he isn't taking me down. He just declared war on the wrong woman. I heard the front door open downstairs. Roger must have gone out to the porch for a cigar. I quickly closed the tabs, wiped the browser history, composed my face into a mask of tired indifference, and went downstairs to play the role of the oblivious wife one last time. But inside, the wife was dead. The mechanic was at the wheel now. The next evening, Roger came home early. He burst through the door with a theatrical energy that made my skin crawl. Hey, honey. I'm home, his voice boomed through the hallway. He sounded cheerful, the manic cheerfulness of a man who thinks he has gotten away with murder and is about to cash the insurance check. I walked into the kitchen from the garage, wiping my hands on a rag. He recoiled slightly as I got close, a micro-expression of disgust that vanished as quickly as it appeared. He was holding a shopping bag from a high-end boutique. Not the jewelry store where he bought the diamond, but a clothing store. I got gifts, he announced, placing the bag on the counter with a flourish. Holly was sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by textbooks. She didn't look up. Her pen scratched aggressively against the paper. Roger reached into the bag and pulled out a scarf. It was brightly colored, a garish pattern of gold and red. For you, Brenda, he said, tossing it to me. Italian silk. Saw it in the window and thought of you. It will add a little sophistication to your wardrobe. I caught it. I ran the fabric between my fingers. It felt slippery, synthetic, insubstantial. I checked the tag discreetly while pretending to admire it. 100% polyester. Made in China. He bought his mistress real diamonds. He bought his wife fake silk. Thank you, Roger, I said, forcing a smile. It's very colorful. And for my brilliant daughter, Roger said, pulling out a handbag. It was flashy, covered in logos that screamed for attention. A little something to help you look the part when you start interviewing for business schools next year. You need to dress for the job you want, Holly. Holly finally looked up. She stared at the bag, then at him. Her eyes were cold. I'm not interviewing for business schools, Dad, she said flatly. I'm applying to engineering programs. I want to study mechanical engineering at State. I want to design engines. Roger's smile faltered. The veins in his neck tightened. Nonsense. You're too pretty to be a mechanic like your mother. You don't want to spend your life smelling like gas and ruining your skin. You want to be in the boardroom, Holly. That's where the real power is. That's where the class is. He looked at me with disdain, gesturing to my coveralls. Speaking of class, Brenda, what is for dinner? Please tell me it isn't that pot roast again. The house smells like cafeteria food. It smells cheap. It is pot roast, I said calmly. It is your favorite. Or it was. It was my favorite when we were poor, Roger sighed, loosening his tie as if the air in the house was suffocating him. But my palate has evolved. You know, I was thinking, maybe we should liquidate some assets. The garage, for instance. My heart hammered against my ribs. Here it was. The market is hot, he continued, pouring himself a glass of wine without offering me any. If we sell the land, we could get a fortune. We could invest in something cleaner. Something more fitting for our status. Like a franchise. Or maybe invest in a wellness center. A wellness center. Vanessa's lounge. He wanted to sell my father's legacy to build a palace for his mistress. Holly slammed her textbook shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the kitchen. You are not selling the garage, Holly said, her voice shaking with anger. She stood up, glaring at him. That is Grandpa's shop. It is Mom's life. It pays for this house. It pays for your car. It is an eyesore. Roger snapped, his mask slipping completely. His face turned an ugly shade of red. It is a dirty, greasy anchor dragging us down. I am trying to build a legacy here, and you two are clinging to scrap metal. I am the head of this household, and I decide what we sell. A legacy of what? Holly challenged, stepping closer to him. Lies? Roger stepped forward, raising his hand as if to silence her. Watch your tone, young lady. I provide for this family. I make the decisions. And I say we are moving up in the world, whether you like it or not. I stepped between them. I was shorter than Roger by 6 inches, but in that moment, I felt 10 feet tall. I had spent my life wrestling rusty bolts that didn't want to turn. I wrestled engines that weighed 500 pounds. I knew how to hold my ground. Dinner is on the stove, I said, my voice low and dangerous. It was a voice he hadn't heard before. If you don't like it, you can go out. But do not yell at our daughter. And we are not discussing the garage tonight. Or ever. Roger looked at me, surprised by the steel in my voice. He blinked, stepping back. He sneered, brushing imaginary dust off his sleeve where I had almost touched him. Fine. I'm not hungry anyway. I have work to do in the study. Real work. He stormed off, grabbing the bottle of wine as he went. Holly looked at me, tears welling in her eyes. Mom, tell me you aren't going to let him do it. Tell me you won't let him sell Grandpa's shop. I reached out and squeezed her hand. My rough, calloused hand against her soft one. He thinks he is the driver, Holly, I whispered, wiping a tear from her cheek. He thinks he is steering this car. But he doesn't realize I have already cut his brakes. 2 nights later, the device was ready. Chuck had outdone himself. I met him behind the scrapyard at dusk to pick it up. It was a small black box, no bigger than a deck of cards, with a wiring harness that looked factory-made. It's plug and play, mostly, Chuck had said. But you need to splice it into the main harness behind the BCM. Don't cross the wires, or you'll fry the ECU and the car won't start at all. And we don't want it not to start. We want it to start, with surprises. I waited until 2 a.m. The house was silent. Roger was asleep in the master bedroom, snoring loudly, probably dreaming of his millions and his mistress. I slipped out of bed, careful not to make the mattress creak. I dressed in my dark coveralls, my ninja suit, Holly called it, and grabbed my specialized tool bag. The garage was cold. The Porsche 911 sat there in the shadows, sleek and arrogant, like a beast waiting to be tamed. I didn't turn on the main lights. I used a headlamp with a red filter so the light wouldn't spill under the door and wake Roger. I popped the lock on the driver's side door using a Slim Jim, a skill my father taught me for when customers locked their keys inside. The lock clicked open with a satisfying sound. I slid into the driver's seat. The smell of the expensive leather interior made me sick. It was mixed with the lingering scent of Roger's cologne and, faintly, a perfume that wasn't mine. Lavender and vanilla. Vanessa. She had been in this car. She had sat right here. I pushed the anger down. I needed steady hands. I removed the panel under the dashboard. It was tight work. I had to contort my body into the footwell, lying on my back with my legs sticking out the door. I located the body control module. I stripped the insulation off the CAN bus wires with surgical precision. My hands, usually so rough, moved with delicate grace. I spliced in Chuck's device. Red to power, black to ground, twisted pair to the data lines. Snap. A plastic clip broke. I froze. The sound was loud in the quiet garage. I held my breath, listening. Above me, floorboards creaked. Roger was awake. I heard heavy footsteps walking down the hallway. Then, the sound of the door to the kitchen opening. He was coming downstairs. Maybe for water. Maybe to check on the car. I scrambled to shove the wires back into the dashboard. I couldn't leave them hanging. I taped them down frantically. The door from the kitchen to the garage opened. Hello? Roger's voice was groggy. Is someone there? I was jammed in the footwell. If he turned on the light, he would see my legs sticking out of his car. I pulled my legs in, curling into a ball on the floor of the driver's seat, pulling the dark floor mat over my boots. The garage light flickered on. I stopped breathing. Through the gap in the steering wheel, I saw Roger standing in the doorway in his silk pajamas. He looked around, squinting against the harsh light. Damn rats, he muttered. Probably another rat. Place is a dump. He walked over to the fridge in the corner of the garage where he kept his imported beer. He grabbed a bottle, opened it, and took a long swig. He leaned against the workbench, my workbench, and sighed. Soon, he whispered to the empty room. Soon I'll be out of this hellhole. He finished the beer, burped, and turned off the light. The door closed. The footsteps retreated upstairs. I let out a breath that I felt I had been holding for 10 minutes. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would trigger the car's alarm sensors. I finished the job in the dark. I soldered the connections so they wouldn't vibrate loose. I wrapped them in factory-grade electrical tape so it looked untouched. It looked seamless. Even a dealer mechanic would have to look twice to notice the modification. I secured the black box behind a cluster of relays, deep in the dashboard where no one would ever look. I pulled out my phone and opened the app Chuck had coded. It was simple. A big red button that said panic and a menu for audio upload. I tapped the test button. A tiny LED on the black box blinked green once. Connection established. I smiled in the dark. I reassembled the dashboard panel, wiped down every surface I had touched with alcohol wipes to remove any fingerprints or grease, and locked the car. As I climbed back into bed next to my cheating husband, listening to the rhythm of his breathing, I felt a surge of power. He wanted to take me for a ride? Fine. I was about to hijack the steering wheel. The next morning was a Saturday. A beautiful, sunny Saturday. The kind of day Roger lived for. He usually spent Saturdays golfing, his transparent code for spending the day with Vanessa. He was dressed in his pristine white polo shirt, plaid pants, and white golf shoes. He looked every inch the country club gentleman he pretended to be. "Don't wait up, Brenda," he called out as he grabbed his keys from the bowl. He checked his reflection in the mirror, smoothing his hair. "Big tournament today. Charity event. Going to be a long day." "Good luck," I said, sipping my coffee at the kitchen island. "I hope you hit a hole-in-one." "Yeah, sure," he muttered, not even looking at me. He walked out to the garage. I watched from the kitchen window. Holly stood next to me, holding her breath, her hand gripping my arm. "Is it active?" she whispered. "It is online," I said, my thumb hovering over my phone screen. Roger backed the Porsche out of the driveway. He looked so confident, so arrogant behind the wheel of that machine. He revved the engine unnecessarily, just to annoy the neighbors. As he reached the end of the street, where the neighborhood traffic was busiest, waiting to turn onto the main avenue, I pulled up the app. "Ready?" I asked Holly. "Do it, Mom," she grinned. "Light him up." I pressed the button labeled Alarm Mode 1, Chaos. Down the street, we heard it. The Porsche's horn didn't just honk. It began to blare. But not a steady honk. Chuck had programmed it to be erratic. 3 long blasts, 2 short, then a sustained wail that sounded like a dying train. Honk. 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 Beep beep wah-h-h-h-h-h-h-h. We saw the brake lights flare red. Roger had stopped dead in the middle of the intersection. Then, the windows. Through the app, I rolled them down, then up, then down again, rapidly. Whir thud. Whir thud. We couldn't see Roger's face from here, but I could imagine it. He was probably mashing buttons, screaming at the dashboard, trying to figure out why his $60,000 car was having a seizure. I tapped another button, wipers. The windshield wipers began to slap back and forth at maximum speed. Swish, swish, swish. Then, the piece de resistance. I hit the fluid button. The washer fluid nozzle sprayed jets of blue liquid onto the windshield. But because the windows were rolling down at that exact moment, the spray caught the wind and curved inside the car. Roger was soaking wet. His pristine white polo shirt was speckled with blue chemicals. Our neighbor, Mrs. Gable, who lived across the street and loved gossip more than oxygen, came out to her porch. She was pointing. Mr. Henderson, walking his golden retriever, stopped and stared. Cars behind Roger started honking. Roger was now trying to drive the car back to the driveway, but every time he touched the gas, I triggered the horn again. It drew everyone's attention. It was a circus, and he was the clown. Finally, he managed to jerk the car back into our driveway, the engine roaring and the horn blaring. He killed the engine and jumped out. He looked insane. His hair was wet, his shirt was stained blue, and his face was a shade of purple I had never seen before. "What is wrong with this piece of junk?" he screamed, kicking the tire of his beloved Porsche. The alarm stopped the moment he turned the engine off. He looked up and saw me standing in the doorway, holding my coffee mug. "Brenda," he yelled, storming towards me. "The car is possessed. It went crazy. The horn, the wipers, it ruined my shirt." I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. I kept my face perfectly straight, masking the joy bubbling inside me. "I don't know, Roger," I said calmly. "German engineering is very complex. It might be a software issue. Those sensors are very delicate." "Fix it," he demanded, wiping blue fluid from his forehead. "You're the mechanic. Get your tools and fix it. I have a tea time in 30 minutes. I took a slow sip of my coffee. "I would," I said, checking my nails. "But it is Saturday. And I am off duty. Plus, you know what you said, you don't want me touching your car. You said my hands were too dirty." "Don't be stupid," he snapped. "I didn't mean. Just fix the damn car." "I can't," I lied smoothly. "If it is a software glitch in the BCM, I don't have the dealer codes. You'll have to take it to the dealership on Monday. Until then, I guess you'll have to take an Uber to your tournament. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. He was furious, but he was stuck. He couldn't drive a car that honked every 5 seconds. "This is unbelievable," he muttered, stomping past me into the house to change his shirt. Useless. Everything in this house is useless. I watched him go. Then I looked at the car. This was just the opening act. He thought a broken alarm and a wet shirt were bad? He had no idea what was coming next. He had no idea what I was going to play through those speakers when the time was right. I walked back into the kitchen where Holly was waiting, a silent high five ready. "Round one to the mechanic," I whispered. Roger spent the rest of the weekend sulking. He refused to take an Uber to his golf tournament, claiming it was beneath his dignity to arrive in a Toyota Camry when he was supposed to be a titan of industry. Instead, he sat on the couch, drinking scotch and glaring at the garage door as if the car itself had personally insulted him. By Sunday evening, his desperation outweighed his pride. He walked into the kitchen where I was prepping invoices for the week. "Brenda," he said, his voice tight. "I need the car for Monday. I have a meeting with Mr. Smith." The Mr. Smith. The venture capitalist from New York. "I cannot pick him up in your truck. It smells like wet dog and diesel." "It smells like hard work," I corrected him without looking up. "But I understand. You need the Porsche." "Can you look at it?" he asked. It wasn't a request, it was a demand wrapped in a whine. "Please. I don't have time to deal with the dealership's waiting list. Just reset the computer or whatever you do." I put down my pen. I looked at him. This was the moment. "I can take a look," I said slowly. "But Roger, you know the rule. If I fix it, you don't complain about how I do it. And you don't complain if I get a little smudge on the leather. Just fix the damn thing," he snapped. I waited until he went to bed. Then, I went to work. I brought my laptop out to the garage and plugged it into the device I had installed. I cleared the chaos mode log so the car would behave normally for a while. I wanted him to feel safe. I wanted him to think the glitch was gone. False security is a dangerous thing. But I wasn't just resetting the system. I was upgrading it. Chuck had given me a second component. A high-fidelity microphone, no bigger than a button. I removed the overhead console, the one that housed the map lights and the sunroof controls. It was the perfect acoustic spot. It would pick up everything said in the front seats with crystal clarity. I wired the microphone into the telematics unit, splicing it into the hands-free calling system. But instead of routing the audio to a phone call, I routed it to the black box deep in the dashboard, which would stream it directly to my secure server. As I soldered the tiny wires, my hands were steady. I thought about the irony. Roger spent so much time curating his image, controlling the narrative, lying to my face. Now, his own car, his sanctuary, his status symbol, was going to become a confessional booth. I finished the installation around 3 a.m. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment in the dark. I tested the mic. "Testing, 1, 2, I whispered. My phone, sitting on the passenger seat, lit up with a notification. "New audio file detected." I played it back. My whisper sounded like I was standing right next to myself. Perfect. I wiped down the console. I cleaned the leather. I made the car look pristine. The next morning, I handed Roger the keys. "It should be fine," I said. I did a hard reset on the BCM and cleared the cache on the sensor array. It was a conflict with the rain sensing module. Roger snatched the keys. "About time. You know, if you kept your own truck in better condition, maybe you would understand modern electronics better." "Maybe," I said. "Drive safe, Roger." He didn't say goodbye. He just revved the engine and sped off. I didn't go to the shop that morning. I set up a command station in my kitchen. Laptop open, headphones on, coffee brewing. At 9 a.m., the first recording came in. Sound of car door opening. Engine starting. Bluetooth connecting. Then, a voice. Not Roger's. A female voice. Finally, Vanessa said. She must have been waiting around the corner. I thought you were never coming. Did the old hag fix it? She did, Roger's voice replied. She was up all night working on it. God, she looked terrible this morning. Bags under her eyes, hair a mess. It is embarrassing to look at her. Well, you won't have to look at her much longer, Vanessa purred. Did you bring the paperwork? It's in the briefcase, Roger said. The loan documents. I just need to get the notary to stamp them. I have a guy who owes me a favor. He won't ask why Brenda isn't there to sign in person. My blood ran cold. He was going to push the fraudulent loan through today. And what about Mr. Smith? Vanessa asked. I'm picking him up at the airport at noon, Roger said. He is the key, Vanessa. Once he signs the investment check for the expansion project, aka our retirement fund, we funnel the money through your spa, declare bankruptcy on the real estate LLC, and vanish. We leave Brenda with the debt and the foreclosure. I love it when you talk dirty, Vanessa giggled. What about the garage? Can we sell it before you leave? I'm working on it, Roger laughed. I told her the market is crashing. She's simple. She believes whatever I tell her about money. I'll get her power of attorney, sell the land to that developer, and add another $1 million to our pot. I took off the headphones. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a rage so pure it felt like white heat. He called me simple. He called me a hag. He was planning to bankrupt me, steal my father's legacy, and run off with a woman who laughed at my pain. I looked at the laptop screen. I had the recording. I had the confession. But I wasn't going to stop him yet. Not now. I needed him to pick up Mr. Smith. I needed him to be at the absolute height of his arrogance before I pulled the rug out. I saved the audio file. I named it the_confession.mp3. Then I opened the control app for the car. I navigated to the audio injection menu. I uploaded the file. You want to talk dirty, Roger? I whispered to the empty kitchen. Let's see how Mr. Smith likes your conversation. Listening to your husband plan your destruction is a unique kind of torture. It is not like finding a lipstick stain on a collar or smelling perfume on a shirt. Those are clues. This was an autopsy of a marriage performed while the patient was still alive. I sat there for hours, cataloging the files. The microphone picked up everything. It picked up the rustle of clothing. It picked up the wet, smacking sounds of them kissing at red lights. It picked up things no wife should ever have to hear. But I forced myself to listen. I needed every scrap of evidence. I needed to harden my heart until it was as tough as the cast iron of an engine block. One recording, timestamp 10:15 a.m., broke me down and built me back up in the span of 5 minutes. Vanessa, ugh, this car smells like stale fast food. Or is that just your wife's scent lingering? Roger, it's the industrial cleaner she uses. She reeks of it. Even when she showers, I swear it seeps out of her pores. It is disgusting. I stopped sleeping in the same bed with her 3 months ago. I told her I had back problems, but the truth is, I just couldn't stand the smell of a working-class woman. Vanessa, you poor baby. You deserve silk and lavender. You deserve a woman who knows how to keep her hands soft. Roger, exactly. Look at your hands, Vanessa. Perfect. Brenda's hands, they are like sandpaper. She tried to touch my face the other day, and I almost flinched. It is like being touched by a man. A laborer. I looked at my hands resting on the granite countertop. They were clean, but they were worn. There were scars. There were calluses. But these hands had held Roger when his mother died. These hands had built the crib for Holly. These hands had signed the checks that paid for the suit he was wearing right now. He didn't just hate me. He was repulsed by me. He was repulsed by the very thing that made our life possible, my work. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, hot and angry. I wiped it away furiously. You think these hands are rough, Roger? I said to the screen. Wait until you feel them close around your throat. I continued listening. The conversation shifted from insults to strategy. And this is where the real gold was. Roger, so, the structure is set. We set up a shell company called Prime Meridian Holdings. Mr. Smith thinks he is investing in a portfolio of commercial warehouses. I show him the fake prospectuses I printed up. He wires the funds, $2 million is the buy-in, to Prime Meridian. Vanessa, and Prime Meridian is owned by Roger, by a trust in the Cayman Islands. But the trustee is you, my love. Under your maiden name. Once the money hits, we wire it out to 3 different offshore accounts. Then, Prime Meridian declares insolvency due to unforeseen market volatility. The money is gone. Mr. Smith writes it off as a bad loss. And we are drinking margaritas in Cabo. Vanessa, and Brenda? Roger, like I said. The loan against the garage is in her name. The mortgage is in both our names, but I'll transfer my half of the liability to her in the divorce settlement in exchange for custody of Holly, which I don't actually want, by the way. Holly is as stubborn and useless as her mother. She can rot in that garage with Brenda. I hit pause. My hand was shaking so hard the mouse rattled against the table. He didn't want Holly. He called our brilliant, kind, ambitious daughter useless. That was it. The last shred of hesitation vanished. The last tiny piece of me that remembered the 25-year-old Roger who loved my piano playing, it died right there. I wasn't just going to ruin his reputation. I wasn't just going to stop the loan. I was going to send him to federal prison for a very, very long time. I opened a new browser window. I searched for Federal Bureau of Investigation Financial Crimes Division. But first, I had a party to attend. Tonight was the gala. The annual Chamber of Commerce gala. Roger had insisted we go, claiming it was crucial for appearances, crucial for closing Mr. Smith. He wanted the picture-perfect family. He wanted the dutiful wife standing silently by his side while he played the big shot. I stood up and walked to the hallway mirror. I looked at myself. I saw a tired woman in a flannel shirt. No, I whispered. I went upstairs to my closet. I pushed aside the sensible clothes. Way in the back, in a garment bag I hadn't opened in years, was a dress. It was black velvet. Vintage. Elegant. I had bought it for a concert I never played. I showered. I scrubbed my skin until it was raw, removing every trace of the garage. I did my hair. I put on makeup, a skill I hadn't used in ages, but the muscle memory was there. I put on the dress. It still fit. It hugged my curves, reminding me that underneath the mechanic's coveralls, I was still a woman. I looked at my hands. I couldn't scrub away the calluses. So I put on a pair of long, black satin gloves. They covered my working-class hands. They made me look dangerous. I was ready for the gala. I was ready to play my part. But tonight, the script was going to change. Before the gala, I had one stop to make. I needed legal armor. I drove my truck, which Roger hated, to the office of Mr. Henderson. He wasn't just our neighbor with the golden retriever, he was a retired forensic accountant who used to work for the IRS. I had called him an hour ago, frantic. Arthur, I need you. I have evidence of a crime. A big one. when I walked into his study, laying the printed emails, the forged loan documents, and the USB drive with the audio files on his mahogany desk, his jovial face turned grim. Arthur put on his spectacles and read through the documents. He listened to a snippet of the audio where Roger discussed the Prime Meridian Shell Company. After 20 minutes of silence, Arthur took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Brenda," he said, his voice grave. "This isn't just a divorce case. This is a RICO case. Racketeer-influenced and corrupt organizations." "He calls it a business deal," I said. "It is a Ponzi scheme wrapped in wire fraud," Arthur corrected. "He is soliciting investment funds for non-existent assets, laundering the money through a shell company, Vanessa's Spa, and planning to flee. And by forging your signature on the loan documents, he has made you a victim of identity theft, but also potentially a suspect if you don't report this immediately." "He plans to leave me with the debt," I said. "He plans to leave you with prison time if the feds come looking for the money and find your name on the loans," Arthur said. "Brenda, you need to file a police report. Now. Today." "No," I said. "Not yet. If I file a report now, they might arrest him before tonight. And if they arrest him now, Mr. Smith keeps his money, sure, but Roger might plea bargain. He might hide the assets he has already stolen. I want him caught in the act. I want him caught with the dirty money in his hands." "That is dangerous," Arthur warned. "You are playing chicken with the FBI." "I have a plan," I said. "Tonight, he is driving Mr. Smith. He is going to brag about the deal. I have the car rigged. I can record his confession to Mr. Smith. And I can broadcast the truth to Mr. Smith before the check clears." Arthur looked at me with new respect. "You rigged his car?" "I'm a mechanic, Arthur," I smiled coldly. "I know how things work. And I know how to break them." Arthur sighed, then opened his drawer and pulled out a business card. "I have a contact at the FBI field office. Special Agent Miller. I will call him. I will tell him we have a cooperating witness, you. We will frame this as you gathering evidence for the state. But Brenda, be careful. Men like Roger, when they are cornered, they don't fight fair." "Neither do I said. "Not anymore." I left Arthur's office with a sense of purpose. I wasn't just a scorned wife. I was an informant. I was the blade of the guillotine waiting to drop. I checked the GPS app. Roger was at the airport picking up Mr. Smith. The audio feed showed they were making small talk. Roger was using his charm voice, smooth and deep. "Roger, Mr. Smith, welcome. The weather is fantastic. I have the paperwork all ready for our dinner tonight. You are going to love the portfolio. Mr. Smith, I'm looking forward to it, Roger. $2 million is a lot of capital, but your projections look solid." They were heading to the hotel to drop off Mr. Smith's bags, then they would come to the house to pick me up for the gala. I went home. I paced the living room. The house felt alien to me now. Every piece of furniture, every painting, it all felt like a prop in Roger's stage play. At 5 p.m., the Porsche pulled into the driveway. Roger walked in, adjusting his cufflinks. He stopped dead when he saw me. I was standing at the bottom of the stairs in the black velvet dress and the satin gloves. My hair was swept up. I wore diamond earrings, fake ones, but they sparkled enough. "Brenda," he stammered. You look appropriate?" I suggested. "For a woman of my status?" He blinked, thrown off balance. He was expecting the mechanic. He was expecting the defeated wife. "Yes," he recovered quickly, checking his watch. "Good. At least you won't embarrass me. Now, remember the rules. Smile. Nod. Don't talk about the garage. Don't talk about cars. If Mr. Smith asks what you do, you say you are involved in local philanthropy. Local philanthropy, I repeated. Got it. And for God's sake, keep your gloves on, he muttered as he turned to the door. We don't want him seeing those hands. I looked at my gloved hands. Under the satin, my fists were clenched tight enough to crush coal into diamonds. Shall we go? I asked. We walked out to the car. Mr. Smith was in the back seat. He was an older man, sharp-eyed, wearing a suit that cost more than my garage. Mrs. Blakely, Mr. Smith said, charmingly. Roger has told me, well, he hasn't told me much, actually. A man of mystery. Roger likes to keep his assets hidden, I said, sliding into the passenger seat. I looked at Roger. But everything comes to light eventually. Roger started the car. The engine purred. To the gala, Roger said, brimming with confidence. Little did he know, he was driving a mobile recording studio. And I was the producer of his downfall. The gala was held at the Grand Riverside Hotel. Chandeliers dripped crystal tears from the ceiling, and the air smelled of expensive perfume and ambition. It was a room full of sharks in tuxedos and piranhas in evening gowns. Roger navigated the room like a politician. He held my elbow with a grip that looked affectionate but felt like a vice. He steered me away from anyone who looked important, parking me near the buffet table while he took Mr. Smith to meet the key players, most of whom were likely part of his delusion or unknowingly part of the scam. I stood by the shrimp cocktail, watching. I felt invisible. To these people, I was just Roger's wife, an accessory. Then I saw her. Vanessa walked in. She wasn't wearing white tonight. She was wearing red. A blood-red gown with a slit up to her thigh. She walked with the confidence of a predator. She made a beeline for Roger and Mr. Smith. I watched as Roger introduced her. Mr. Smith, this is Vanessa, a local entrepreneur and a business associate. Vanessa smiled, extending her hand. The diamond pendant I had seen earlier was resting in the hollow of her throat. My diamond. Charmed, Mr. Smith, she purred. Roger has told me so much about your vision. Mr. Smith looked enchanted. Roger looked triumphant. I stood there, sipping sparkling water, feeling the cold rage settle in my stomach like a stone. They were doing it right in front of me. They were flaunting their affair, their theft, their conspiracy, right in the middle of the town's high society. Roger glanced over at me. He caught my eye. He gave me a look that said, "Stay there. Don't ruin this." Then he turned his back on me. I pulled out my phone. I checked the app. The connection to the car was stable. The audio file _confession.mp3 was queued up. But I needed to wait. The gala wasn't the place. The acoustics were too bad, and Roger could just claim it was a prank. I needed them alone. I needed Mr. Smith trapped in the car with the truth. The night dragged on. I watched Roger ignore me for 3 hours. I watched him touch the small of Vanessa's back when he thought no one was looking. I watched him laugh at Mr. Smith's bad jokes. Finally, around 10 p.m., the event began to wind down. Roger came over to me, smelling of scotch and victory. "We're leaving," he said. "Mr. Smith wants to go over the final contract details. I'm going to drive him to his hotel. You can take a taxi home." I looked at him. "You're leaving me here? In a ball gown?" "Mr. Smith and I need privacy," Roger hissed. "This is business, Brenda. You wouldn't understand. Just call a cab. Or walk. The fresh air might do you good." He turned to Mr. Smith. "My wife has decided to stay and catch up with some old friends. Shall we?" Mr. Smith looked at me, confused. "Are you sure, Mrs. Blakely? We can drop you off." "No," Roger interjected quickly. She insists. Come on, let's get the car. They walked out. I waited 10 seconds. Then I walked out the side door, slipping off my heels so I could run. I didn't call a taxi. I ran to the parking lot. I hid behind a pillar near the valet stand. I watched the valet bring the Porsche around. Roger tipped him, probably with money from our joint account, and got in. Mr. Smith got in the passenger seat. They pulled out onto the main road. I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over the execute button. I wasn't in the car, but I was in the car. Through my headphones, I could hear them. Roger, what a night, Arthur. Can I call you Arthur? I think we really solidified the partnership. Mr. Smith, it was impressive, Roger. I have the check in my pocket. I'm ready to sign. Roger, music to my ears. Let's head to your hotel and get the ink on the paper. Now. I pressed the button. Part 13, the climax, the car confesses. Word count, 1,100 words. The Porsche was cruising down Main Street. It was quiet inside the cabin, save for the soft hum of the engine and the self-satisfied breathing of my husband. I stood alone in the hotel parking lot, watching the red taillights fade into the distance. But in my ears, via the live stream, I was right there with them. I tapped play file, the _confession.mp3, and set the volume to override max. Inside the car, the peaceful silence shattered. Suddenly, through the Bose surround sound speakers, Vanessa's voice boomed out, crystal clear and deafeningly loud. Vanessa, and what about Mr. Smith? Roger's voice on the live feed gasped. What the hell? Then, the recording of Roger's voice blasted through the speakers, answering Vanessa. Roger, recording I'm picking him up at the airport at noon. He is the key, Vanessa. Once he signs the investment check for the expansion project, aka our retirement fund, we funnel the money through your spa, declare bankruptcy on the real estate LLC, and vanish. In the car, panic erupted. Roger, live no. No! What is this? Stop! I heard the frantic clicking of buttons as he tried to turn off the stereo. But the system was locked out. The volume wouldn't go down. It only got louder. Vanessa, recording we leave Brenda with the debt and the foreclosure. Roger, recording exactly. She's simple. She believes whatever I tell her. I'll get her power of attorney, sell the land. She reeks of grease. It is disgusting. I stopped sleeping in the same bed with her. Mr. Smith, live Roger? Is that you? Roger, live it's a glitch. It's AI. Someone hacked the car. It's a deep fake. Arthur, don't listen to this. Roger, recording Mr. Smith thinks he is investing in warehouses. But Prime Meridian is owned by a trust in the Cayman Islands. The money is gone. Mr. Smith writes it off as a bad loss. And we are drinking margaritas in Cabo. The recording looped. Mr. Smith writes it off as a bad loss. The money is gone. We leave Brenda with the debt. Mr. Smith, live stop the car. Stop the car. Roger, live Arthur, please, it's a joke. It's a prank by my competitors. Mr. Smith, live that is your voice, Roger. And that is the woman from the party. You are stealing from me? Pull over or I will grab the wheel. I heard the screech of tires. Roger must have slammed on the brakes. I imagined the scene. The luxury car filled with the sounds of their own treachery. Roger, sweating, terrified, his lies stripped away by the very technology he dismissed. Mr. Smith, live open the door. Unlock the doors. Roger, live Arthur, let me explain. Mr. Smith, live if you don't unlock this door, I will call the police right now. Actually, I'm calling them anyway. Sound of door unlocking. Sound of Mr. Smith scrambling out. Mr. Smith, faintly, from outside. You are a crook, Blakely. You stay away from me. I'm calling the district attorney. Inside the car, there was heavy, panicked breathing. Roger was alone. Roger, Liv, whispering to himself what just happened. How? Brenda. Brenda did this. He grabbed his phone. I heard him dialing. My phone in my hand rang. It was him. I didn't answer. I just smiled. But I wasn't done. He was sitting on the side of the road, probably hyperventilating. I decided to send him a little message. I used the text-to-speech function in the app. I typed, "Enjoy the music, darling." A robotic female voice spoke through the car speakers. "Enjoy the music, darling." Then I started the recording again. She reeks of grease. She's simple. She's disgusting. Roger screamed. A primal scream of frustration and terror. Sound of fists hitting the steering wheel. He tried to start the car to drive away, but I hit the kill switch button. The engine died. The electronics stayed on. The audio kept playing. He was trapped in a metal box with the evidence of his own sins on repeat. I stood there in the cool night air, clutching my phone. My heart was racing, pounding a rhythm of victory against my ribs. I had done it. I had exposed him to the one person who mattered most to his scam. The tension in my chest released, replaced by a flood of adrenaline. I looked at the phone screen, at the kill switch button glowing red. If you are listening to this right now, and you can feel the satisfaction of that moment the bully gets punched, the moment the liar gets caught, then you are my kind of people. You understand that justice isn't always served in a courtroom, sometimes it is served cold, on the side of the road, through a Bluetooth speaker. If you are still with me, please like this video and comment the number 1 below. Let me know you are here. Let me know you are riding shotgun with me on this journey of revenge. Your support tells me I'm not alone, that I'm not just a crazy ex-wife, but a woman standing up for herself. Comment 1 right now, and let's finish this story together. Because trust me, Roger hasn't hit rock bottom yet. The next morning, the town was buzzing. Small towns are like echo chambers, secrets bounce off the walls and amplify. Mr. Smith hadn't just walked away. He had gone straight to the police station. And then, he had gone to the local coffee shop, shaken and angry, and told anyone who would listen that Roger Blakely was a fraud. I woke up early. I didn't go to the house. I went straight to the garage. I needed to be on my turf. Holly was already there, sweeping the floor. She looked at me, her eyes wide. "Mom," she said. "It's all over TikTok. Someone filmed Dad screaming in his car on the side of the road last night. The car was playing a loop of him admitting to fraud. It has 50,000 views." I looked at the video she held up. It was grainy, shot from a passing car. You could hear Roger's voice booming from the Porsche, "We funnel the money, declare bankruptcy." And seeing Roger hitting the dashboard. "Viral justice," I said, pouring myself a coffee. At 9 a.m., Roger showed up at the garage. He didn't have his Porsche. It was probably still towed on the side of the road where I left it disabled. He arrived in a taxi. He stormed into the bay, looking like a man who hadn't slept. His eyes were wild, his suit wrinkled. "You," he screamed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You did this. You hacked my car. You ruined me." Mike and Sam, my mechanics, stepped forward, dropping their wrenches. They were big men, protective of me. "Back off, Roger," Mike growled. "She recorded me illegally." Roger shouted, looking around frantically. "That audio, it was private. It's inadmissible." "Private?" I said, stepping out from behind the counter. I wiped my hands on a rag, a deliberate gesture. You were broadcasting it to the street, Roger. It sounded pretty public to me. Mr. Smith pulled the funding, Roger hissed, lowering his voice. He's pressing charges. The investors are calling for their money back. Vanessa is freaking out. Good, I said. You have to fix this, Roger pleaded, his tone shifting from anger to desperation. Tell them it was a deep fake. Tell them you made it up. If you don't, we lose everything. The house, the garage, everything. They'll seize the assets, Brenda. They won't seize the garage, I said calmly. Yes, they will. It's marital property. Just then, a truck pulled up. It was Mr. Henderson, my neighbor. And behind him, 2 other cars. Locals. Customers. People whose cars I had fixed for 20 years. Everything okay here, Brenda? Mr. Henderson asked, stepping out with his dog. Roger was just leaving, I said. You can't kick me out. Roger yelled. I own this place. Actually, I said, reaching into my desk drawer. We need to talk about ownership. The crowd of locals gathered around the bay door. They stood silently, a wall of flannel and denim. They knew me. They knew Roger was the man who thought he was better than them. Roger looked at the crowd. He saw no sympathy. He saw judgment. You're enjoying this, he whispered. You vindictive witch. I'm not enjoying it, Roger, I said, looking him in the eye. I'm fixing it. I'm removing the faulty part. He retreated. He had no choice. He walked back to the taxi, the jeers of the mechanics following him. But I knew this wasn't over. A cornered rat bites. And Roger was about to try his last, desperate move to save his own skin. 2 days later, Roger called me. His voice was calm. Too calm. Brenda, he said. We need to settle this. I've spoken to a lawyer. I want a divorce. I agree, I said. I'm coming over with the papers. Let's do this amicably. No courts, no drama. Just a clean break. He arrived an hour later. He placed a stack of documents on the kitchen table. He looked deflated, but there was a glint in his eye that I didn't trust. Here's the deal, Roger said, sliding the papers toward me. I admit, the business deal went south. There are liabilities. Debts. How much? I asked. A lot, he waved his hand dismissively. But I am willing to take the hit. I will take the business debt. I will take the fall for the investors. In exchange. He paused, licking his lips. In exchange, I want the house and the garage. I need assets to liquidate to pay off the creditors. If you sign them over to me, I can sell them, pay off the debts, and keep you out of court. If you don't, the creditors will come after you personally because your name is on the loan. He was lying. He was trying to trick me into giving him the only real assets left so he could sell them, pocket the cash, and run, leaving me with the fraudulent debt he had already put in my name. I looked at the papers. It was a quitclaim deed for the house and a transfer of business ownership for the garage. So, I said, playing the part of the confused wife. If I sign this, I lose my home and my job. But I'm free of the debt? Exactly, Roger said, leaning forward. I'm doing this to protect you, Brenda. You don't know how to handle these sharks. Let me handle it. You can move into an apartment. Get a simple job. It's for the best. I looked at Holly, who was sitting in the corner, holding her phone up, recording everything. I have a counteroffer, I said. I pulled out my own folder. Mr. Henderson and I had drafted it that morning. I keep the house. I keep the garage. Full ownership. In exchange, I slid a document toward him. I sign over my entire interest in Prime Meridian Holdings and VL Enterprises to you. I waive any claim to your future earnings or your current business ventures. You get to keep 100% of your company. Roger looked at the paper. He blinked. He was greedy. He still believed, somewhere in his delusional mind, that he could salvage the scam, or that the offshore money was safe. He thought I was giving up a share of millions in exchange for a dusty garage. You want the garage? And you give me the company? He asked. Yes, I said. I just want to fix cars, Roger. I don't want your high-stakes world. He tried to hide his smile. He thought he was winning. He thought he was tricking the stupid mechanic again. He didn't realize that Prime Meridian was a radioactive asset that was currently being investigated by the FBI. By taking full ownership, he was taking full liability for the fraud. Well, Roger said, pulling out a pen. If that's what you want. I suppose I can be generous. He signed the papers transferring the house and garage to me solely. Then he signed the paper accepting full responsibility for Prime Meridian. Done, he said, standing up. You can keep your grease pit. I'm going to rebuild. Vanessa and we have plans. I'm sure you do, I said. He walked out the door, holding the papers that sealed his fate. He thought he had just swindled me out of a potential fortune. In reality, he had just signed his own confession. Did you get that? I asked Holly. Every word, she said, stopping the recording. He admitted the companies are his. He admitted the debt is his. And he signed away the house. Good, I said. Send it to Agent Miller. The end came swiftly, like a bolt snapping under too much torque. I had given Agent Miller everything, the audio recordings, the text messages, the forged loan documents, and finally, the video of Roger signing the agreement where he claimed full ownership of the fraudulent companies. It was a Tuesday morning. The sky was clear blue. I was at home. I hadn't gone to the shop. I knew it was happening today. I walked into the living room. The baby grand piano sat there, gathering dust. Roger's aesthetic piece. I hadn't touched it in 5 years. I walked over to it. I opened the fallboard. The keys were yellowed slightly, but they looked inviting. I sat down. I looked at my hands. They were clean, but the scars were there. The history was there. I placed my fingers on the keys. I didn't play Clair de Lune. I played something stronger. Beethoven's Pathetique. A song of storm and stress, of tragedy and triumph. As the first chords rang out, filling the house that was finally mine, I heard sirens in the distance. They got louder. I kept playing. The music swelled, crashing and rising. I looked out the window. 3 black SUVs pulled up to the curb. Then a police cruiser. I saw Roger come out of the house he was renting, using money he stole. He was wearing his silk robe. I saw agents swarm him. I saw the flash of badges. I saw Roger trying to run back inside, but he was tackled on his manicured lawn. Then I saw another team at the spa downtown. Holly texted me the live stream. They were leading Vanessa out in handcuffs. She was screaming, her mascara running, looking anything but classy. Roger was dragged to the police car. He looked toward our house. He couldn't hear the piano, but I played for him anyway. I played the soundtrack to his destruction. He was shoved into the back seat. The door slammed shut. I finished the sonata. The final chord hung in the air, vibrating with release. I closed the piano lid gently. I didn't slam it. I treated it with respect. Goodbye, Roger, I whispered. I stood up. My legs felt shaky, but my heart was light. The heavy weight of his judgment, his disdain, his theft, it was all gone. I walked into the kitchen where Holly was waiting. "Is it over?" she asked. "The bad part is over," I said. "Now comes the rebuilding." 3 weeks later, I went to see him. I didn't have to go. My lawyer said I shouldn't. But I needed closure. I needed to look him in the eye one last time without the filter of a windshield or a phone screen. The county jail was a stark, gray building. It smelled of bleach and despair, a different kind of industrial smell than my garage. I sat on one side of the glass partition. Roger was brought in. He looked terrible. His hair was unwashed, gray at the roots where the dye was fading. His orange jumpsuit was ill-fitting. He looked 20 years older. He sat down and picked up the phone. "Brenda," he said. His voice was cracked. "Brenda, thank God you came. You have to help me. It's a misunderstanding. The lawyer says if I can post bail. I need $50,000. You have to sell the garage. Please. I'll pay you back. I swear." I picked up the phone. "Hello, Roger," I said calmly. "Did you hear me?" he hissed, his eyes darting around. "Sell the shop. Get me out of here. I can fix this. I just need time." "I'm not selling the shop, Roger," I said. "The shop is doing great. We just hired a third mechanic. Business is booming. Everyone wants to bring their car to the woman who caught the Main Street swindler. He flinched. You're enjoying this." "I'm surviving," I said. "Like I always have." "Vanessa set me up," he pleaded. "She tricked me. She testified against me. She said I forced her." "Can you believe that?" "I believe it," I said. "Rats eat each other when the ship sinks." "Brenda, please," he started to cry. Actual tears. "I'm your husband. We were married 25 years. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It meant everything to me," I said. "Until you decided I was disgusting. Until you decided my hands were too dirty to touch." I placed my hand against the glass. "Look at them, Roger." He looked at my hand. It was clean. I was wearing a new ring, a simple gold band I had bought for myself. "These hands," I said softly. "They built the roof over your head. They paid for your suits. They cooked your meals. And yes, they got dirty. But dirt washes off. Greed? Betrayal? That stains your soul, Roger. That never comes off." "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I was stupid. I was weak." "You were," I agreed. "And you underestimated me. You thought because I fix cars, I was broken. But I'm the one who knows how to put things back together. And I'm the one who knows how to take them apart." I leaned in closer to the glass. "I was the one who rigged the car, Roger. I was the one who recorded you. I was the one who sent the files to the FBI. Me. The dirty mechanic. His eyes went wide. The shock on his face was total. He stopped crying. He just stared at me as if he was seeing me for the first time. "You?" he whispered. "You did this?" "I fixed the problem," I said. I hung up the phone. I stood up and walked away. I heard him banging on the glass behind me, screaming my name, but I didn't look back. I walked out into the sunshine. The trial was the social event of the season, sadly. Roger and Vanessa were tried together. It was a spectacle. They turned on each other with a viciousness that shocked even the judge. Vanessa's lawyer argued that she was a naive victim, manipulated by an older, controlling man. She cried on the stand, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, wearing a modest cardigan that looked ridiculous on her. He promised me marriage, she sobbed. He told me the money was legal. He said his wife was crazy and abusive. Then Roger's lawyer argued that Vanessa was a femme fatale who seduced a confused businessman and led him into crime. She demanded diamonds. Roger shouted from the defendant's table, losing his composure. She threatened to leave me if I didn't get the loan. She's the mastermind. The prosecution just sat back and watched them destroy each other. And then, they played the tapes. My tapes. The courtroom listened in silence as Roger's voice filled the air, arrogant and cruel, mocking me, mocking Mr. Smith, detailing the crime. Roger's voice, she reeks of grease. We funneled the money, vanished to Cabo. There was no defense against that. When the verdict came down, I was sitting in the back row with Holly. Roger, guilty on 12 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of money laundering, and 1 count of identity theft. Sentence, 12 years in federal prison. Vanessa, guilty on 8 counts. Sentence, 10 years. As the bailiffs led them away, Roger looked back. He scanned the crowd, looking for me. When our eyes met, he didn't look angry anymore. He looked defeated. He looked like a man who realized he had thrown away a diamond to pick up a piece of broken glass. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just nodded, once. Acknowledging the end. Vanessa was screaming as she was dragged out. Her classy facade had completely crumbled. It is over, Mom, Holly whispered, squeezing my hand. Yes, I said. Justice is served. We walked out of the courthouse. The reporters were there, flashing cameras. Mrs. Blakely. Mrs. Blakely. How do you feel? They shouted. I stopped. I looked at the cameras. I feel like getting back to work, I said. I have cars to fix. 6 months later. The garage was noisy. The sound of pneumatic drills, clanging metal, and classic rock radio filled the air. It was the best music in the world. Mom, can you check the timing on this Mustang? Holly called out. I walked over. Holly was wearing coveralls, her hair tied back in a bandana, grease on her cheek. She looked beautiful. She had been accepted into the state engineering program on a full scholarship, but she was spending her summer working with me. Let's see, I said, leaning over the engine. The shop had changed. I had repainted it. The sign out front now read, Blakely and Daughter Auto Repair. Business was better than ever. We had cleared the debt, not Roger's debt, that went with him to prison, but the mortgage on the house. I had sold the Porsche, which Roger had legally transferred to me in the asset swap before he realized it was worthless to him, and used the money to pay off the house. I drove my truck. But I also treated myself. I had joined a local jazz band. We played on Thursday nights at a small club downtown. I played piano. I wore nice dresses, not silk, but comfortable, beautiful fabrics that I chose for myself. Mr. Henderson, Arthur, came by often. Sometimes for an oil change, sometimes just to bring me coffee. He was a good man. A kind man. We were taking it slow, just dinner and conversation, but it was nice to be looked at with respect. That evening, after we closed the shop, Holly and I sat on the tailgate of my truck, watching the sunset. Do you miss him? Holly asked. I thought about it. I miss who I thought he was, I said. But I don't miss the man he became. And I certainly don't miss feeling small. You're not small, Mom, Holly said. You're the biggest person I know. I hugged her. You know, I said. He wanted to leave a legacy. He wanted to be a big shot. He is, Holly laughed. He's the biggest cautionary tale in the state. I laughed too. It felt good to laugh. We built this, I said, looking at the garage. With our hands. Dirty, greasy, beautiful hands. Yesterday, a letter arrived from the penitentiary. It was from Roger. I sat by the fireplace in the living room. The same room where the piano stood, now open and played daily. I looked at the envelope. His handwriting was shaky. I debated opening it. Curiosity is a mechanic's trait, we always want to know what's inside. I tore it open. Dear Brenda, I have a lot of time to think in here. I think about the house. I think about Holly. But mostly, I think about you. I was wrong. About everything. You were the only real thing in my life, and I treated you like an accessory. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I wanted you to know. I miss the smell of the garage. It smells like home. Please, if you can spare a little money for my commissary account. I stopped reading. Of course. It always came back to money. He missed me, but he missed my wallet more. I stood up and walked to the fireplace. The flames were dancing, warm and bright. I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't feel sadness. I felt indifference. And indifference is the true opposite of love. I tossed the letter into the fire. I watched the paper curl and blacken. I watched his words turn to ash. Goodbye, Roger, I said. I looked at my hands. I flexed my fingers. They were strong. They were capable. I sat down at the piano. I started to play a new song I had been working on. I called it Freedom. It was a jazzy, upbeat tune with a driving rhythm, like a V8 engine on an open highway. I am Brenda Blakely. I am a mother. I am a mechanic. I am a pianist. And I am free. Don't ever let anyone tell you that you aren't enough. Don't let anyone make you feel dirty for working hard. And never, ever let them slam the lid on your music. Because if they do, well, you can always rig their car. And so, as Brenda's story comes to a close, we are left with a powerful reminder of the strength that lies within us all. This is not just a tale of revenge or justice, it is a testament to resilience, self-worth, and the courage to reclaim your life when others try to diminish it. Brenda's journey teaches us that no matter how undervalued or underestimated we may feel, we hold the power to rise above betrayal and rebuild, stronger than ever. At its heart, this story is about rediscovering one's identity and refusing to let anyone define your worth. Brenda's hands, once ridiculed, became symbols of her determination and skill. Her scars were not flaws, they were proof of her hard work and sacrifices. In life, we all face moments when others may try to silence our music or dim our light. But like Brenda, we must remember that our value is not determined by others' opinions, but by the strength of our character and the integrity of our actions. What about you? Have you ever faced a moment where you had to stand up for yourself, reclaim your power, or rediscover your worth? Share your thoughts below or comment good if this story inspired you to embrace your inner strength. Let's celebrate the power of resilience together.